Something told him to go. A whisper he couldn't ignore. Anthony Scott hadn't seen his grandfather's ranch in 2 years. Forgotten land, neglected property. But that morning, something pulled him there. He drove, expecting nothing. What he found shattered everything. A woman in the dirt. 3 babies in a wagon. His eyes, his chin, his blood. And the woman raising them? The maid he thought had simply moved on. She hadn't moved on. She'd been waiting. Not for him to find her. For him to find himself. What in God's name? Anthony's shoes sank into Montana dirt. There she was. Michelle Baker, his former maid, kneeling between corn rows, blue dress, white apron, hands working the soil like she owned it. But his eyes moved past her. To the wagon under the tree. 3 babies, red sweaters, blonde hair. One turned to look at him. Those eyes. His mother's eyes. And that chin. The cleft chin every Scott man carried. Anthony couldn't breathe. Michelle. His voice broke. Are those? She stood slowly, brushed the dirt off, faced him without fear. William, Henry, Malcolm, she said, each name like scripture. They're yours, Anthony. His knees buckled. 18 months. She'd been here, on his land, raising his sons, and he never knew. Why didn't you tell me? Her jaw set hard. I tried. Your number was gone. Your lawyers gave nothing. You'd moved on. She stepped between him and the wagon, and even if I'd found you, then what? I become your secret? They become your scandal? She shook her head. I wasn't going to let that happen, so I came here, to your grandfather's land, the only honest thing your family owns. I wanted them to know their real heritage, even if their father never showed up. One of the boys, Henry, stood in the wagon, small hand holding a grey rock. He stretched it toward Anthony. Offering. He doesn't know who you are, Michelle said quietly. To him, you're just a stranger. Anthony stared at his son's outstretched hand. His flesh, his blood, his future, reaching for a man who didn't deserve it. Tears burned his eyes. What do I have to do? His voice shook. Michelle watched him for a long moment. Show up, tomorrow, and the next day, dressed for work, not wealth. Prove you can be consistent before you try to be their father. She turned toward the farmhouse. We'll see if you're serious, or just guilty. She walked away with his children. And Anthony stood alone, expensive suit, muddy shoes, shattered pride. Henry still held out that rock. Anthony took it. Small, warm, simple. But it meant everything. A son's trust, given freely, to a father who hadn't earned it yet. Anthony gripped it tight. Tomorrow, he'd be back. Tomorrow, he'd start becoming the man those boys deserved. Before we continue, like this video, subscribe, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because maybe you needed to hear this today. Maybe you're the one who moved on from something you should have stayed for. Maybe you're the one carrying weight alone, wondering if anyone sees you. Maybe you're the one still waiting for someone to show up. Whoever you are, this story is for you. God doesn't forget, He doesn't waste pain, and He never stops calling us back to what matters. Now, let's see if Anthony answers that call. Anthony didn't remember walking back to his truck. His legs moved on their own, past the corn rows, through the gate, across the gravel. His hand still clutched that small grey rock. He sat behind the wheel, engine off, staring at nothing. The Montana sky stretched wide and endless above him. Same sky his grandfather had worked under, same land his family had built their name on. And now, 3 boys with his blood were learning to walk on that soil. Without him. His phone buzzed. Then again, emails flooding in, board meetings, contract approvals, a reporter wanting comment on the quarterly earnings. He turned the phone face down. None of it mattered. Not anymore. Anthony started the engine and drove. Not toward the highway, not back to the airport, just away. The town appeared after 10 minutes, small, quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew your grandfather's name before they knew yours. He spotted a motel, paint peeling, sign flickering, the Mountain View Inn, It looked like it hadn't changed since his father was young. Anthony pulled in. The woman at the counter looked up from her magazine, grey hair, kind eyes. She squinted at him for a moment, then smiled. "Well, I'll be. Anthony Scott. Haven't seen you since your daddy passed. What brings you back?" Anthony opened his mouth, closed it. What could he say? "I just found out I have 3 sons I never knew about. The woman I abandoned is raising them on my grandfather's land. I don't know who I am anymore. Just checking on the property," he managed. She handed him a key, real metal, old school. "Room 6, same one your granddad used to rent when he needed to think." Anthony took it without asking how she knew he needed to think. Small towns remembered everything. The room smelled like pine cleaner and old wood. A radiator hummed in the corner. The bed creaked when he sat on it. He pulled out his wallet. Behind his platinum card, tucked in the back where he'd forgotten it, was a photo. Him and Michelle, a company event, 2 years ago. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at him, laughing at something he'd said, really laughing, the kind that made her whole face light up. He was looking at her too. He remembered that night, remembered thinking she was the only real person in a room full of pretenders. And then he'd let her go. Never asked why she'd become a maid, never asked about her dreams, never saw her as anything more than the woman who brought his coffee. But she'd seen him. She'd known about his grandfather, about the ranch, about the legacy that actually mattered. She'd known him better than he knew himself. Anthony set the photo on the nightstand and walked to the window. In the distance, if he squinted, he could see the faint glow from the ranch. She was there, bathing his sons, feeding them, singing them to sleep. Alone, like she'd done for 18 months. The rock was still in his hand. He turned it over, smooth, grey, ordinary. But Henry had chosen it, picked it up, offered it to a stranger. His son. His son had given him a gift, and Anthony had taken it without knowing how to give anything back. He looked at his hands, soft, manicured, hands that signed contracts and shook deals, hands that had never changed a diaper, never fixed a fence, never held his children while they cried. Tomorrow, he'd told Michelle. Tomorrow, he'd show up. But what did showing up even mean? He didn't know how to be a father, didn't know how to work land, didn't know how to be the man those boys needed. All he knew was money, power, control, and none of that meant anything here. The sun was setting, orange and gold spilling across the sky. Anthony sat on the edge of that creaky bed, holding a rock his son had given him, and felt the full weight of everything he'd missed. First words, first steps, first laughs. 18 months of moments he could never get back. His chest ached. Tomorrow felt like a lifetime away, but also not long enough. Anthony didn't sleep. He lay on that motel bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the radiator click and hum. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them. 3 small faces, blue eyes, cleft chins. His children. The words still felt foreign in his mind. At 4 a.m., he gave up on rest, showered, put on the same suit from yesterday, then stopped. Dressed for dirt, not deals. Michelle's words echoed. He drove into town before sunrise, found a small general store just opening. An old man behind the counter looked up from his coffee. "Help you?" "I need work clothes, jeans, boots, gloves." The man studied Anthony's suit, his Italian shoes, the Rolex on his wrist. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Aisle 3. Anthony bought everything, changed in the store bathroom, left his suit hanging on the door hook. He caught his reflection in the mirror. He looked ridiculous. Brand new jeans, stiff boots, tags still hanging off the work gloves. A billionaire playing dress-up. But it was all he had. He drove back to the ranch as the sun broke over the mountains. The porch light was still on. Anthony parked at the fence line, killed the engine. For a long moment, he just sat there, heart pounding, palms sweating. What was he doing? He didn't know how to be a father, didn't know how to work land, didn't know how to earn trust he'd never valued. The screen door creaked open. Michelle stepped out. coffee mug in hand. She wore jeans and a flannel shirt, her hair pulled back. She saw his truck. Didn't look surprised. Didn't look pleased either. Anthony got out, walked to the fence, stopped there, waited. Michelle took a sip of her coffee, studied him, his new boots, his stiff jeans, his desperate eyes. "You came back. I said I would." Men say a lot of things. The words stung, because they were true. She walked down the porch steps, slow, deliberate, stopped a few feet from the fence. "Those boots have never touched dirt." "No." "Those hands have never held a hammer." "No." "You don't know anything about farming, about children, about earning something you can't buy." Anthony swallowed hard. "No, I don't." Michelle's eyes searched his face, looking for something. He didn't know what. "Then why are you here?" The question hung in the morning air. Anthony thought of all the answers he could give. Guilt, duty, legacy. But only one felt true. "Because my son gave me a rock, and I want to deserve it." Something shifted in Michelle's expression. Just barely, a crack in the armor. She set down her coffee mug on the fence post. "The irrigation ditch needs clearing. East field, shovels in the barn." She turned to go back inside. "Michelle?" She paused, didn't turn around. "Can I see them, before I start?" Silence stretched between them. "Earn it." The screen door closed behind her. Anthony stood there, alone, new boots already dusty. He looked toward the barn. Then he started walking, one step at a time, the way trust is built. The shovel was heavier than he expected. Anthony gripped the wooden handle and drove it into the soil. His arms ached after 10 minutes. After 30, they burned. The irrigation ditch stretched out before him, clogged with mud and dead leaves, months of neglect packed into the channel. He kept digging. Sweat soaked through his new shirt. Blisters formed on his palms, then burst, then bled. He didn't stop. From the farmhouse he could hear sounds, small voices, laughter, the clatter of breakfast dishes. His sons were eating. Without him, Anthony drove the shovel deeper, again, again, again. By noon, his back screamed. His hands were raw meat. The ditch was only half cleared. He stood there, breathing hard, staring at his work. A corporate lawyer would have done this in an hour, a real farmer in less. Anthony Scott, billionaire, couldn't even clear a ditch properly. The screen door creaked. He looked up. Michelle walked toward him. No coffee this time, just a canteen and a small towel. She stopped at the edge of the ditch, looked at his progress, then at his hands. "You're bleeding." "I know." She handed him the canteen. He drank. Water had never tasted so good. "You should wrap those." "I'm fine." "You're stubborn." "I'm trying." Something flickered in her eyes. She tossed him the towel. "Wrap them. Infection won't help anyone." She turned to leave. "Michelle." She stopped. "Thank you for the water." A pause, then she walked back toward the house. Anthony wrapped his hands. The cloth turned red almost immediately. He picked up the shovel again. 2 more hours passed. The sun beat down mercilessly. Then he heard it. Small footsteps. In the grass behind him. He turned slowly. Henry. The quiet one, standing there in tiny overalls, those storm-blue eyes watching. Anthony's heart stopped. The boy held something in his hands. A cup, plastic, red. He walked closer, careful steps, like a deer approaching something unknown. Anthony didn't move, didn't breathe. Henry stopped 3 feet away, held out the cup. Water. He'd brought water. Anthony knelt down slowly, eye level with his son. "For me?" Henry nodded, solemn, serious. Anthony took the cup, their fingers brushed. Such small hands. "Thank you, Henry." The boy's eyes widened slightly, surprised to hear his name. Then, so quietly, Anthony almost missed it. "Mama said help." 4 words. His son's voice. For the first time, Anthony's throat closed, his eyes burned. "You did help, very much." Henry studied him for a moment, then turned and walked back toward the house, careful steps through the grass. At the porch, he looked back once, then disappeared inside. Anthony stood there, holding a plastic cup of water, hands bleeding, back broken, and for the first time in 18 months, he felt something crack open in his chest. Not pain, hope. His son had brought him water. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't trust, wasn't love, but it was a beginning, and beginnings were all he had. By sunset, Anthony could barely stand. His back was locked, his hands throbbed. The ditch was finally clear, water trickling through like it was meant to. Small victory, but his body paid the price. He put the shovel back in the barn, stood there for a moment in the dim light. Sawdust smell, old wood, tools hanging on pegs, his grandfather probably hammered in. Everything here had history. Everything except him. He walked toward his truck, slow steps, each one hurting more than the last. The farmhouse windows glowed warm, orange light spilling out into the evening. Through the glass, he could see them. Michelle at the stove, stirring something, steam rising. William and Malcolm at a small table, crayons scattered, paper everywhere. Henry sitting apart, quiet, watching his brothers. A family, his family, living their life without him. Anthony stopped walking. His hand found the fence post, gripped it, steadied himself. He could knock on the door, ask to join them, ask to sit at that table. But he hadn't earned that yet. The screen door opened. Michelle stepped out. She saw him standing there, watching. For a long moment, neither spoke. The distance between them wasn't just the yard. It was 18 months of absence, years of blindness, a lifetime of privilege that made him think he could take what he wanted and leave what he didn't. She'd been the one left. Now she held all the power, and she knew it. "Ditch is clear," Anthony said. His voice sounded foreign to him, rough, tired. "I saw." Silence again. "I'll be back tomorrow, dawn." Michelle nodded. "Once. Your hands need proper bandaging, not that rag." "I'll manage." "Stubborn gets you hurt." "I know." She studied him, those eyes seeing right through him. "You won't last a week. Men like you don't." The words cut. "Then I'll prove you wrong." Something shifted in her expression, not belief, not trust, but acknowledgement. "We'll see." She went back inside. The door closed softly. Anthony stood there until the stars came out. He thought about knocking, thought about asking to say goodnight to his sons, thought about all the words stuck in his throat. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I want to do better." But words were cheap. He'd spent his whole life making promises, contracts and deals and handshakes that meant nothing. Michelle didn't need his words. She needed his presence. Anthony drove back to the motel, parked, sat in the darkness. His hands ached. His heart ached worse. Tomorrow, he'd be back. Tomorrow, he'd dig another ditch, fix another fence, do whatever she asked. Not because he deserved a place at that table, but because those boys deserved a father who showed up, even when it hurt, even when she doubted, even when the silence between them felt louder than any argument. He pulled out the grey rock, still in his pocket. Henry's gift. His first gift from his son. Anthony held it tight, and in that motel parking lot, under Montana stars his grandfather once wished on, he made a promise. Not to Michelle, not even to the boys, to himself. He would earn this, or die trying. 3 days passed. Anthony showed up at dawn each morning, worked until his body screamed, left at sunset. He fixed fence posts, cleared brush, hauled water. Tasks, Michelle left, written on a notepad by the barn door. No conversation, no meals together, no time with his sons. Just work. And distance. On the 4th morning, Anthony arrived early. Too early. The sun hadn't cracked the horizon yet. He parked quietly, walked toward the barn to check the day's list. That's when he heard it. A sound from inside the farmhouse, drifting through the open kitchen window. Crying. Not a child. Michelle. Anthony froze. He knew he should leave, give her privacy, Pretend he hadn't heard, but his feet wouldn't move. Her voice came through the window, broken, raw. "I can't do this alone anymore, Lord. I can't." Silence. Then more. "I've been strong. I've been faithful. I've raised them the best I know how, but I'm tired. So tired." Anthony's chest tightened. "And now he's here, and I don't know if he'll stay. Don't know if I can trust him. Don't know if I'm protecting them or punishing them by keeping him at arm's length." A sob, muffled, like she was pressing her hand to her mouth. What if he leaves again? What if he gets bored? What if he decides we're not worth the trouble? Anthony stepped back. His boot crunched on gravel. The crying stopped. He moved quickly, quietly, back toward the barn. His heart hammered. She was afraid. Not angry, not bitter. Afraid. Of him leaving. Of him breaking their hearts. Anthony leaned against the barn wall, breathing hard. He'd been so focused on proving himself, on earning his place, on showing up. He never considered what it cost her to let him try. Every day he came back, she had to hope again. And every hope was a risk, a chance to be hurt, to watch her sons love a man who might disappear. She wasn't keeping him away to punish him. She was keeping him away to protect them. From him. The weight of it crushed him. He closed his eyes. All those boardrooms, all those deals, all those times he'd walked away from things that got complicated. She knew that man. She'd been hurt by that man. And now she was watching, waiting, for that man to show up again. Anthony looked down at his hands, calloused now, blistered and healing, different from before. But were they different enough? He pulled out the grey rock, Henry's gift, carried it every day like a talisman. He wanted to be worthy of it. But wanting wasn't enough. He had to become. Not for a week, not for a month. Forever. The sun broke over the mountains, light spilling across the land. Inside the farmhouse, he heard movement. Michelle composing herself, becoming strong again. Because that's what she did. Every single day. Alone. Anthony straightened up, wiped his face. He wouldn't mention what he heard, wouldn't embarrass her, wouldn't use her vulnerability against her. But he would remember it. Every time he wanted to quit, every time his body ached, every time he felt sorry for himself. He would remember that she'd been carrying this weight for 18 months. Alone, while he lived in penthouses. He owed her more than presence. He owed her proof. The barn door creaked as he opened it. The list was there, new tasks. He got to work. 2 weeks in. Anthony's hands had hardened, his body had adjusted, the work came easier now. But more than that, something had shifted. Small things. Henry bringing him water each afternoon, William waving from the porch, Malcolm toddling toward him once, curious, before Michelle scooped him up. Tiny bridges being built, thread by thread. That morning, Anthony was repairing the chicken coop when he heard tires on gravel. Not his truck. Something else. He straightened up, wiped sweat from his face. A black Mercedes rolled up the drive. Polished, expensive, violently out of place. His stomach dropped. He knew that car. The door opened. Eleanor Scott stepped out. His mother. 72 years old, silver hair perfectly styled, pearls at her throat, eyes sharp as broken glass. She surveyed the ranch like it was beneath her, which, to her, it was. Then she saw Anthony. Her expression twisted. "My God," her voice carried across the yard. "It's true." Anthony set down his hammer, walked toward her slowly. "Mother, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" She laughed. Cold, brittle. "Your assistant said you cancelled 3 weeks of meetings. Disappeared. No explanation. So I made calls, asked questions." She looked past him, toward the farmhouse. "And imagine my horror when I learned you'd been spotted here, playing farmer, with your maid, and 3 bastard children." The word hit like a slap. "Don't call them that." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Have you lost your mind, Anthony? Your reputation, your legacy, everything your father built, and you're here, in the dirt, with that woman?" The screen door opened. Michelle stepped out. She'd heard the car, heard the voices. She stood on the porch, still, watchful. Eleanor turned toward her. "You." The word dripped venom. "I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends today." Anthony stepped between them. "Mother, stop." Eleanor ignored him, her eyes locked on Michelle. "How much? Name your price. I'll write the check right now. You take those children and disappear. Forever." Michelle didn't flinch, didn't blink. "They're not for sale." Eleanor laughed. "Everyone has a price, dear, even maids who get pregnant to trap billionaires." Anthony's blood went cold. "That's enough." "Is it?" Eleanor spun toward him. "You're destroying everything. For what? Some woman who spread her legs and got lucky." "Mother!" "No," Eleanor's composure cracked. "I will not let you throw away your father's legacy for this scandal. Those children will never be Scots. Never. I'll make sure of it. Lawyers, courts, whatever it takes." Silence. Then, from behind Michelle, a sound. Small footsteps. Henry appeared in the doorway, those blue eyes wide, confused, scared. He'd heard everything. Eleanor saw him, saw those eyes. Her own mother's eyes, staring back at her from a child she refused to claim. Something flickered across her face. Gone in an instant. "Get in the car, Anthony, now, before you ruin yourself completely." Anthony looked at his mother, then at Michelle, then at Henry, standing in that doorway, looking at the woman who'd just called him a scandal. His son, his blood, being told he was worthless. Something inside Anthony broke. Not his heart, his silence. "Leave." Eleanor blinked. "Excuse me?" "Leave, now, and don't come back." "Anthony, those children are mine. That woman raised them with more dignity than you've shown in your entire life. And if you ever call them bastards again, if you ever threaten them again, I will cut you out completely." Eleanor stared at him. "You'd choose them, over your family." Anthony looked at Henry, at Michelle, at the life he was fighting for. "They are my family." Silence stretched like wire about to snap. Then Eleanor turned, got in her car, slammed the door. The Mercedes disappeared down the drive. Dust settled. Anthony turned toward the porch. Henry was crying, silent tears streaming down his face, and the trust they'd been building, thread by thread, hung by a single fiber. Anthony ran to the porch. Henry had disappeared inside, the screen door swinging closed. Michelle blocked his path. "Don't. He's upset. I need to—" "No." Her voice was firm, quiet, final. "You've done enough." The words cut deeper than Eleanor's ever could. "Michelle, I didn't know she'd come. I didn't invite her. I would never—" But she came. Michelle's eyes were wet, controlled, barely holding. "She came because you're here, because you showed up. And now my son heard himself called a scandal, a bastard, something to be erased with a check." Anthony's chest caved. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't unhear it." She turned and went inside. The door closed. Not slammed, just closed. Somehow worse. Anthony stood on that porch, alone. Through the window, he could hear it. Michelle's soft voice, comforting, soothing. "It's okay, baby. You're not what she said. You're not a scandal. You're my blessing, my miracle, my answered prayer." Then Henry's small voice, broken, confused. "Why she say that, Mama?" Silence. Then Michelle's reply, steady despite her pain. "Because some people see love as shame. But she's wrong, baby. You are loved. So loved. Never forget that." Anthony stepped back. His knees hit the porch step. He sat, hard. This was his fault. His mother, his family, his world, crashing into theirs. He'd wanted to protect them, to claim them, to fight for them. But his presence had brought the storm right to their door. Maybe Michelle was right. Maybe he should have stayed away. Maybe his love was a curse, not a gift. He sat there as the sun moved across the sky. Minutes, hours. He lost track. No work today. Just wait. The screen door opened. Michelle stepped out. She looked tired. So tired. She sat on the step beside him, not close, but not far. Silence stretched between them. Finally, she spoke. He cried himself to sleep. Anthony's throat closed. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know." More silence. "I should leave," the words hurt to say. "If my being here brings this, maybe it's better if I—" "Stop." He looked at her. Her jaw was tight, eyes forward. "You don't get to run. Not this time." "But Henry. Henry will heal. Children do, but only if the people who hurt them don't disappear." She finally looked at him. "You defended him. He heard that too. You chose him. Publicly. That matters." Anthony blinked. "It doesn't feel like enough." "It's not." She was quiet for a moment. "But it's a start." They sat in silence, watching shadows lengthen. "Your mother will fight this," Michelle said softly. "I know. She has money, lawyers, power." "I have more." Michelle shook her head. "This isn't about money, Anthony. It's about will. How long before you get tired? Before the lawsuits drain you? Before your reputation suffers too much?" He turned to face her. "I'm not leaving them." "Words." "I know. You need proof." "I need more than proof." Her voice cracked. "Just barely. I need to know that when it gets hard, really hard, you won't disappear again." He had no answer for that. Because he'd never been tested. Not really. Until now. The sun set, orange and purple bleeding across the sky. Michelle stood. "He asked about you, before he fell asleep." Anthony looked up. "What did he say?" She paused at the door. "He asked if you'd come back tomorrow." Then she went inside. Anthony sat there, darkness falling around him. His son had asked if he'd come back. After everything. After the hurt. He still wanted to know. Anthony pulled out the grey rock, held it tight. Tomorrow. He'd be back tomorrow. And every day after. Until they believed. Anthony came back before dawn. He sat in his truck, waiting, praying. Not the prayers he'd learned in church. Not rehearsed words and polished phrases. Just talking. "Please, let me be enough. Let me be better." The sun rose. The screen door opened. Michelle stepped out, saw his truck, nodded once. Permission. He got out, walked to the barn, found the list. Fix south fence, paint porch rails, stack firewood. He got to work. An hour passed. Then he heard it. Small footsteps, grass crunching. He turned. Henry. Standing there in his overalls, those blue eyes studying Anthony with something new. Caution. Fear. Anthony set down his hammer, knelt in the dirt. "Hey, buddy." Henry didn't move. Silence stretched. Then, soft as morning. "You came back." Anthony's heart cracked. "I'll always come back." Henry considered this, his small face serious, thinking. "The mean lady, she your mama?" Anthony swallowed hard. "Yes." "Why she say bad things? How do you explain hate to a child? How do you explain that blood doesn't guarantee love, that money can poison hearts?" Anthony chose truth. "She's afraid. Afraid of things she doesn't understand." Henry frowned. "Afraid of me? Afraid of how much I love you?" The words came out before Anthony could stop them. Henry's eyes widened. Silence. Then the boy did something unexpected. He walked forward, slow steps, careful. He stopped right in front of Anthony, reached out his small hand, and placed it on Anthony's cheek. Gentle, curious, testing. Anthony stopped breathing. "You not mean like her," Henry whispered. A tear slid down Anthony's face, then another. "No, buddy, I'm not." Henry nodded, satisfied. Then he turned and walked back toward the house. Halfway there, he looked back. "You fix fence?" Anthony wiped his face, smiled. "Yeah, I'm fixing the fence." Henry gave a tiny nod. Approval. Then he disappeared inside. Anthony knelt there in the dirt, hands shaking. His son had touched his face. His son had chosen to trust again. After everything. The gift of that moment was staggering. He stood, picked up his hammer, got back to work. Around noon, Michelle came out. She stood on the porch watching him. He could feel her eyes. Finally, she walked toward him, stopped a few feet away. "He told me what you said." Anthony paused. "I meant it." "I know." She was quiet. Then, "Dinner's at 6, if you want." Anthony looked up. Her eyes were guarded, careful, but something else lived there now. The smallest seed of belief. "I'd like that, very much." She nodded, turned to go. "Michelle." She stopped. "Thank you for giving me another chance." She looked back at him, those eyes, seeing everything. "Don't thank me yet, just don't waste it." She walked inside. Anthony stood there, hammer in hand, heart full. Dinner, with his sons. At the table he'd been watching through windows. Finally invited in. Not because he'd earned it completely, but because he hadn't quit. Because he'd stayed. Because he'd chosen them over comfort, pride, and his mother's approval. The fence could wait. Tonight, he'd sit at a table with his family. And that was worth more than any empire. 6 months later, Anthony sat at the kitchen table, the same table he'd watched through windows, the same table Michelle had set for 3. Now set for 5. William sat to his left, Malcolm to his right, Henry across from him, Michelle at the head, where she belonged. They held hands, bowed heads. Michelle's voice, steady and warm. "Lord, thank you for this food. Thank you for this home. Thank you for bringing together what was scattered. Amen." "Amen," the boys echoed. "Amen," Anthony whispered. They ate, mashed potatoes, roasted chicken, green beans from the garden Anthony had helped plant. Simple food. Sacred food. "Daddy, more please." William held up his plate. "Daddy." The word still made Anthony's heart stop every time. "Sure, buddy." He served his son, wiped Malcolm's chin, listened as Henry told a story about a frog he'd found. Normal things. Holy things. After dinner, they moved to the porch. The boys chased fireflies in the yard, their laughter floating up like prayer. Anthony and Michelle sat in the old rocking chairs, watching. "Your mother called again?" Michelle said quietly. "I know. She's still threatening lawyers." "Let her." Michelle looked at him. "You sure? It could get ugly." Anthony reached into his pocket, pulled out papers, unfolded them. Already filed. Full paternity, legal recognition. William, Henry, and Malcolm Scott. "My lawyer says it's airtight." Michelle's breath caught. "You did it. Publicly. Announced it last week. Press release. The whole thing." She stared at him. "Your stock." Dropped, then recovered. "Turns out, people respect a man who claims his children." He smiled. "Who knew? Who knew?" Michelle shook her head, tears forming. "I didn't think you'd actually. I told you. I'm not leaving. Not running. Not hiding." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, "I believe you." 3 words, worth more than billions. Henry ran up to the porch, breathless, excited. "Daddy, Daddy, look." He held up a rock, grey, smooth, just like the first one. "Found it by the creek, for you." Anthony took it. His collection was growing, a shoebox full now. "Thank you, son." Henry grinned, ran back to his brothers. Anthony held the rock, felt its weight. His son's love, given freely, again and again. Because he'd stayed. Because he'd shown up. Because he'd chosen dirt over deals, family over fortune, presence over pride. Michelle reached over, took his hand. First time she'd touched him willingly. He held on like she might disappear. "You know," she said softly, "your grandfather would be proud." Anthony looked at the land, the fields, the home, his boys catching fireflies under Montana stars. "I think he'd be proud of you," Anthony replied. "You saved this place, saved them, saved me." She squeezed his hand. "We saved each other." The sun set, gold and purple. Same sky his grandfather had loved. Same land his great-grandfather had blessed. And now, new roots growing. 3 boys who knew their father. A woman who'd found partnership. A man who'd found his soul. Not a billionaire anymore. Just a father. And that was the only legacy that mattered.